Hi. Hello. Welcome everyone to Love Through the Ages. Thank you to our hosts, Barnes & Noble, for putting this event together for all of you. My name is Sophie Jordan. I'm the author of The Duke Effect. I write historical romance, young adult romance, contemporary romance, you name it, as long as it's romance, I'm there. So I'm moderating this evening with, I have everyone's name and titles because I don't want to mess anything up. So this evening we have Jasmine Guillory. She's the author of While We Were Dating, which is coming out soon in July. Alicia Rye, First Comes Like. I love that title. That is on sale February 16th, which is just around the corner. And Eloisa James, author of Wild Child, that's on sale this March. And Julia Quinn, author of Bridgerton, The Duke and I, which, as you probably know, is available right now. So this is a very appropriate month to talk about romance. Obviously, February is the month of love, but for us, love and romance is year-round. As writers and readers of the genre, there's not a day we don't think about it. So we're very excited, though, to celebrate it with you right now. So I'm going to turn over first to Jasmine and let her introduce herself a little bit about her title, While We Were Dating. Jasmine, are you with us?
Hello, here I am. Hi, I'm the author of 6 romance novels, including The Wedding Date and the Proposal, my first 2 books. While We Were Dating comes out this summer. It comes out in July. It is the story of Anna Gardner, who is a movie star who starts a sort of secret relationship with Ben Stevens, who you may remember from one of my previous books, is the ad exec on a big commercial that she's shooting, and hijinks ensue in the course of their relationship.
Hijinks ensue can be, yes, I can't wait. I want to remind everyone, as we're going through talking to all of you, to be dropping in any questions you may have for Jasmine, for Eloisa, Julia, Alicia, like me, we're here and we're going to get to all kinds of questions tonight. So I want to move to our next author, Alicia Rye, First Comes Like, which I love that title. And you're out just this week.
Alicia. That's right. I'm out 2 days after Valentine's Day. So my book is First Comes Like. And it is about an American influencer. Her name is Gia, and she starts getting some flirty DMs from this very famous Bollywood actor. And, you know, she kind of falls in like with him. And then when he comes to America to sort of launch his Hollywood career, she tracks him down at a party, like the forthright gal she is. And unfortunately, he has no idea who she is. So somebody's been using his account to catfish her. But nonetheless, they kind of get caught a little bit by the paparazzi, by her family. So they decide to launch what they call a faux-mance, just like a little fake dating, romance. And, it just kind of unfolds from there. And it's just 2 nice people falling kind of, in like and in love with each other, which is just felt right to write right now. So that is First Comes Like, and it comes out in February 16th. Yeah, next week, next Tuesday.
There you go. Okay, next we have Eloisa James. Her Wild Child releases this March, which should sound really far away, but it's not. We're already in February.
Hi, everybody. So I brought this one along because I actually have it, My Last Duchess, which came out this fall, and then Wild Child comes out, as you said, this March. And they're both about the Wilde family, so they're a little bit wilder than the Bridgertons, but I have a big eccentric family, same kind of idea. A lot of fun.
That sounds great. I love that we're all here today for all of your palettes, contemporary, historical. We can talk about all of that. And our next author with us is Julia Quinn, the author of Bridgerton.
Oh. I'm Julia Quinn. I'm the author of several books, but the one that's kind of in the news right now is The Duke and I, also now known as Bridgerton, The Duke and I, which is the subject of the first season of Bridgerton, which is now on Netflix.
Yay.
So
not much more to add about it right now. I feel like I've been doing nothing but talk about it for the last couple months, but it's been very exciting.
Yes, it is exciting. And, you know, we're delighted about it. We're delighted, of course, about the attention it's brought to the romance genre and so many of the questions that we've gotten as romance authors I've never gotten since Bridgerton, which leads me to my next question. And again, pop down Facebook, Twitter, all of our viewers, feel free to send us your questions. So what I've been thinking about is, as romance, we're all readers first. I'm just making a big leap in assumption and saying if you're a romance writer, it's because you're a romance reader. So as a romance reader writer, what is the one thing you would like the world to know about romance? Like, maybe it's not the question being asked you, but it's what you wish people would know and understand about romance and romance novels. Does someone want to take it first? I don't want to put anybody on the spot. If right now, maybe you have a burning answer to that question. I feel like I'm staring at Alicia. I don't know.
Well,
My screen.
That's fine. You know, I was actually talking about this with somebody this morning on a podcast, and one thing that I was talking about is how, you know, there's this idea that writing a romance novel is predictable because there's always going to be a happily ever after, right? That's sort of our genre convention. You know, it ends happily. And I was telling them it is actually pretty difficult to write a happy ending. It's not as easy as one would think. And I think part of that is because, you know, our world sort of isn't bent towards happiness. It's not bent towards a happy ending for everybody. And it's not bent that way, especially in media. So there's, you know, large groups of people who have never sort of seen that happy ending. And, you know, there's large groups of people who feel maybe they can't get that happy ending. And so when I pick up a romance novel or when I write one, it is actually kind of subversive to see that and to see it end happily and to see characters in love and, you know, getting what they want, because that's not always true in all sorts of media or in life.
I think that's a good point. I think it's really tricky. I think it's almost easier. You could write a book and you could end something ambiguously or unhappily or with a cliffhanger, and that's almost easier. That's a really good point. It's tricky.
It's easier to be cynical sometimes than it is to be optimistic, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I think often for me, like, one of the hardest things in writing a romance novel is figuring out what is it about these people that would like make them happy with one another? Like, what is a happy ending for these people? Because happy isn't the same for everyone. Like, you know, your happy ending will be different than mine and different than hers. And so I think you really have to figure out characters and know them in order to know what their happy ending is and to make sure the other person does too. So I think that is often the trickiest thing in writing a romance novel.
Yeah.
I was going to add that I think Alicia was really onto something about how the media is not bent towards happiness. And I think that might explain a little bit of the success of Bridgerton. I think it took a lot of people by surprise because they're not used to getting happy endings in their popular media. And one of the things that I think the show did so well was convey the feeling that we get when we read a romance novel, but in my case, a historical romance novel in particular. When you watch the show, you go through, as the viewer/reader, the same emotional reactive arc, which is not something that I think a lot of television viewers are used to if they're not already reading romance. And I feel like saying, like, we could have told you so. We could have said to you, like, this is what you get with romance novels, and now you can see this. And so I think that took a lot of people by surprise, and it didn't even occur to them that they could have this type of popular culture media experience, getting this happy ending. I mean, without it necessarily being syrupy sweet or whatever they thought a romance novel was.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, the thing that I wish everyone knew is how great it feels to read a romance novel. Like, there's so many people who like will read one for the first time and they're like, oh, I didn't understand. Like, yeah.
I had no idea that this was a romance novel. I don't know what they thought, but they have no idea. Eloisa, what were you going to add?
I was just going to add something to what Julia and Alicia said, which is that if you're looking at the romance reader's experience. I just got a letter 2 days ago from a woman in Pakistan who's been reading my romances apparently since she was quite young. And she wrote me because she wanted to say that she felt that she demanded from the universe that she get a hero like mine. And she thinks she found the best man in all of Pakistan. I mean, go her. And she feels that she demanded him because her standards were given to her by romance novels and she would take no less. So I think it's not just the experience of the moment. I actually think that romances can have a profound effect on women's lives in terms of empowerment, in terms of understanding you don't have to settle for the cynical guy down the street. You might find a hero.
That's really interesting to me because a lot of people, you hear that, I'm sure you've all heard this before when people are like, don't you think you're giving women unreasonable expectations?
Oh.
I'm always saying,
we've all heard that one.
Yes, we've all heard that. And the answer is no. I want them to have those expectations, actually.
It's like, this is what we should be expecting. I mean, why is it unreasonable to expect a good guy? Geez.
I mean, I think the problem is that in reality, the bar is in hell. I mean,
Yes.
for a lot of straight men. So, getting even slightly above it, you're like, oh man, that's amazing. And when you write somebody who's well above it, they think that that's not real. But we're held to those expectations all the time. So
I have to tell you guys, I was down at the University of South Carolina teaching a romance. They flew me in to teach a romance class, and I have my whole group of creative writers. So some men and mostly women, and they're not writing romance, they're writing all kinds of stuff. This man, they had to read one of my romances, and he said, "I just think that the bar is too high. It's just so unlikely. Like no one could act like this." And he sort of gets in a vein, and then before he can think about it, he says, "And he the way he can make love all night long, like that's just not reasonable." And there was dead silence in the room, and all the women just turned and looked at him. And I was like, "Okay, moving on, moving on." So
they're telling on themselves is what
Yeah,
they do.
exactly.
Oh, well, we have a question from Gabby from Facebook, and she wants to know, as an author, a little bit about your creative process and what does that look like? Do you start with an idea and just build on it from there? I still, almost 20 years of writing, I'm fascinated to hear about other writers' processes. I don't know everything. Okay. Someone teach me, make my writing life easier.
Well, I'll start. I usually start with characters, I think, at least one. Like I'll start with one person and then kind of think about them and what would be a fun person to pair them up with. Like who would be a good challenge for them? Who would make them happy? And then what is a good story for those two people? And then I sort of go from there, but sometimes it's a situation, like sometimes it's a small glimmer of something, and then I pair that with a character. So usually, oftentimes the beginning of it, I can't there's a lot of stuff going on in the first week that I have an idea, and then I start really thinking it through.
I love the thinking part. That's what I call the daydreaming.
Yes.
It's exciting to think as writers, part of our job is daydreaming this stuff up. Alicia, what about you?
Yeah, I tend to start with characters too. When you asked about writing process, I just glanced guiltily at the floor because you can't see all my index cards that I have spread out everywhere. So as a weird sort of web of all my characters right now.
I love plotting.
It is like my writing process is so chaotic that it looks like that, that scene from Always Sunny with Charlie in front of the the bulletin board with all the string attached to it. That's what my writing process tends to look like.
Like solving a crime. There you go.
Like I've got things attached to other things. So, but I do tend to start with characters because I think I'm more of a character driven writer. And I usually think of just like Jasmine, I think of one character first and I'm like, well, who could go with them? And sometimes nobody goes with them. And I just kind of shelve them for a while until I find somebody who goes with them. And then, occasionally, like my last book, I came up sort of with a sort of a high level concept first, almost like an elevator pitch. And then I, went out from there. I was like, what if this girl gets catfished and, the guy, then she falls in love with the guy whose face the other one was using, so
I love it. And then you go from the back and try to figure out
from the back and I reverse engineer it. Yeah.
It's fun.
I'm the kind of person who I need help. So I've used Julia for help, for example. dull, you call up a friend and you say, oh my God, my characters are so boring. They're so boring. They're so nice. They're so pretty. They're in a carriage together. I can't stand either one of them. I don't want to spend another 6 months with them. And then your friend says, well, what if the carriage broke down right now? Or what if one of their dresses fell to the floor? Or,
That wasn't me.
I need help. Yeah, I need help. I like the help from other people's imagination. So, friends of mine who are writers, but also like my husband and daughter, neither of whom read romance. Although I have to say my daughter's now obsessed by Bridgerton. It's made me watch it twice, but it hasn't got her reading last, but she likes, she's more of a visual media person. But I need help. I need to spark off movies. I listen to songs and I think, oh, that'd be a good song. Anything, any ideas I can get from anybody who's smart, I steal them, try and make it into a book.
So I'm a little bit like Eloise in that the initial spark for a book can come from anywhere. Like I had a book that started with a first line. I thought of a first line I really liked. Another one, I actually had a high concept. It started there. Probably most often it starts with a character because I'll be bringing in a character who was a secondary character in a previous book. So it'll start somewhere. And then from there, I will start to build it. And it usually will be a kind of a combination of building the characters and coming up with the plot at the same time. But I found that I can't move forward until I have a really good sense of the characters. And a lot of times I will end up really kind of exploring in my head and then a little bit on paper their entire backstory, like what happened to them before they got to this moment. And I'll be writing it all down, and it'll be in this outline or synopsis or whatever you want to call it. And very often the stuff that I come up with doesn't even show up in the book. I'll be like, oh, this happened, that happened, this is everything that happened to get us to this moment when we start the book. And I think that even if it doesn't end up in the book, it still helps me to know them better. And somehow through some mysterious force, that will help me to make the characters more three-dimensional. Mm-hmm. And so that goes on. And then I will come up with a rough outline, which I will stick to maybe 75%-ish. I don't know. And then I'll write mostly chronologically. And I tend to edit as I go along. I've tried to be the person who like races through and does like a first draft and then goes back and cleans it up. And I just can't. I'm obsessive. I'm just constantly going back, circling around. But the advantage to that is that when I'm done, I'm pretty much done. I mean, I don't really have a first draft. So I guess that's kind of my process.
Yeah, I think all we've established is how smart romance writers are, because clearly, look at the work, the level of work that everybody puts in, and everything's different. I do know, I think things have changed from when, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I did one book entirely out of order, just kind of as an experiment. It was just a period of time in my life where I was having trouble getting words on the page. So I just wrote that whole thing out of sequence, and then I had to patchwork it like a giant quilt together. It's never happened again, but things can evolve and change. There was one question we got that definitely sparked my interest. And I think I'd love to hear what some of y'all think about it. Sorry, I'm scrolling back through. I can't find it, but I do recall it. Like, the question had something to do with romance is getting such positive press lately. And do we think that'll continue? And I do agree. For the most part, we have gotten a lot of positive press, just attention in general, thanks to the success of Bridgerton. So what do some of y'all think? What do y'all see for the future of romance in the year or the next 2 years? I think even pre-Bridgerton, just this year, because of the pandemic, I felt like there have been readers turning to romance, and then Bridgerton happened. And what do you think, Jasmine?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like this has been such a hard year for everyone. And I think people are crying out for stories that make them feel happy and hopeful. And so I know, like, I've had so many people tell me, oh, I discovered your books this year. They got me through the pandemic. And do you have other books that I can read? Because it's still going. And so like, I'm always excited to bring more people in, because I know that I started reading romance at a really hard time. for me, and like romance got me through. And so I'm glad that romance is doing that for so many other people. Because the thing is, like, once you become a romance reader, you don't go away. So all of those people who are coming to romance now during the pandemic are going to keep reading romance. It's not like the world is going to get better and they're going to say like, oh, I didn't really like those books. No, of course not. Once you start reading romance, you love it forever. And so so I certainly am excited about all the new readers, and I just hope that they keep bringing more people in.
Yeah. Anyone want to add to that?
I can add from an academic point of view, because I watched in the pace of my career, I watched like mysteries move from being kind of like a low rent genre fiction to being stuff that was taught in universities. And just in my career, like when I, right before I got in People magazine as page turner of the week, and this was like my second book. And they said, we'll give you more space if you give us a picture. So I went into my chair and I said, I've been writing this on the side. And he said, don't tell anyone, you will never get tenure. You will, this is the chair of the English department. And I said, fine. And we didn't go with the picture. And to me, it's a very neat thing that I am now the chair of that same English department. And I was elected by a lot of the same people who presumably back then would have said, no, she doesn't get tenure, right? I think it's all changed.
Yeah.
I think it's seen now as a genre that's that is a genre in its own right, and isn't sort of just like this, bastardly stepchild somehow.
Yeah, I don't think there's no excuse. When my son was about 3 or 4 years old, I had a box of my author copies had arrived in the car, and it was a book much like this cover. And he asked me, he said, Mommy, why do you write kissing books? And I remember I had a moment driving my car, like a panic, like, what do I tell to a 3-year-old boy? What do I say? It's gotta be. And I just said, it just came out of my mouth, and I've never forgotten it. And now I make stickers and send to Reader's Swag that says happy books. I think I said to him though, kissing books are happy books. And that's just it. That's just it. It promotes, it promotes love and happiness and hope. And I remember he was so satisfied with that answer. He was like, okay, and that's the truth of it. Romance 101. Why there's no shame in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about, any genre, like we're basically a fandom. I mean, this is just what we're fans of. And so one of the things I really love about romance is when there's new people who come to our fandom, we're so in generally, we're pretty welcoming. And so, when you come and you say, oh, I've read this, I saw Bridgerton, what can I read next? We're like, oh, here's like 40 other things, that we can get into your eyeballs because we want you to join us. And so that's one of the things I really love about this community is that we want more people, like come in, like come share these like feelings with us, because so then we can all feel good together.
That's actually something I've been working on since, suddenly I find myself with a bit more exposure than I've ever had before. And one of the things that I've been or the media things I've been accepting as much as I can, or where they're asking me like, what are some of the other books? And I'm like, because, well, yes, I want you all to read all of mine, but you're going to run out soon. So I did something for BuzzFeed, and I'm going to be doing something for the Today Show and be like, there's so many good things out there. So I've really been trying to grab more people in wherever I can, because there's such great writers out there. And one of the things I've been really hopeful about the success of Bridgerton is both, bringing more readers in to the genre, but also hopefully, sparking more film adaptations. So I'm very optimistic about that as well.
Yeah. Bring them all. Let's see romance adaptations everywhere. And there was a question that's much kind of in the vein of what we're talking about right now. Can we please forecast the future of romance novels? Well, I would love to. And where do we need opportunity or growth? It's a little bit of a crystal ball question right there. I mean, I think, Julia, you just hit some of that. I would love to see more adaptations, and there certainly are more coming within all of the categories of romance, right?
There are. I mean, the Hating Game movie, I believe that they already wrapped in filming. There's both Virgin River and Sweet Magnolias on Netflix. There are, couple other projects I've heard about that I'm not allowed to mention, but are super exciting. Not me, but other people. So I think we're going to get more. I think that, you've got so many of the decision makers in Hollywood are men. And this is changing, but not fast enough. But, they were just like, well, we know everybody will come and they'll go to another superhero movie. Well, I like superhero movies too, but I don't want only superhero movies. And so I think it surprised people. They're like, wait a minute, we can make a movie. We can make a kissing movie of people in fancy clothes. It's not based on Jane Austen and it'll make money. And so now all of a sudden it's like, oh, who knew that women make purchasing decisions? Like,
Yeah, who knew?
But
What's the ratio? How many Netflix subscribers are women?
hello. So I'm really hopeful because, when it comes right down to it, you show with the pocketbook that it's the power of the purse, really.
Oh, here's a fun one. We can get into some naughty area here. Jennifer from Facebook, where do we draw the line on a love scene? There's a wide range between a scene with a door closing behind them and erotica. Obviously, audience is huge. What guidelines do you use? What are guidelines? I don't know if I do. My guidelines is my self-comfort, and I'm pretty comfortable being pretty detailed. What about, with the exception of, I do have a young adult historical YA coming out called 16 Scandals. And I've already been getting questions, like librarians have been sending me questions saying, so wait, is this like Bridgerton for teens? And Julia, I'm like, yes, it is exactly like Bridgerton for teens. That's it exactly. Please go order mini copies for your library.
I know Sarah McLean started her career that way. Remember, she had that wonderful historical YA.
I think it was called The Season.
The Season, yeah, that's a fabulous book.
For me personally, I don't think I'm known as being especially spicy, or I'm just kind of like middle of the road. If there's a continuum of stuff, I'm kind of in the middle. But for me, my personal guidelines when I'm working on writing a love scene is it's got to move either the story or the characterization in some way. If it doesn't feel like it is contributing to one of those two things, or hopefully both, then it probably doesn't belong there. And it kind of answers this own question I had when as a reader, I noticed that I'd be reading a book that, closes the bedroom door, and I'd be like, really? I'd feel like, something up, I was disappointed. And then I'd be reading another book that had so many love scenes, and I'd be like, ugh, page, because it was like boring me. And so I'm like, why? And it made me actually stop and think, well, what is it? Where is the happy medium between these two things? What works for me? And I realized that to me, a love scene has to be just integral to the story and characterization. If it isn't, then it's just, I guess that's maybe closer to erotic, or it's just filler, or I don't know, but I still want it because, it's such a big part of romance and love. So that's how
It's so different too. I've had readers say it's too much, my love scenes, and then readers, it's not enough. So it's such a specific question. Alicia, where do you fall in the, I've read some of your work.
Yeah.
I've read your
I'm pretty comfortable with anything, but I use my characters as a guideline. So, for example, the Modern Love series starts with Right Swipe, and that's a pretty, pretty open door, and the language they use is a little bit more fluent. Girl Gone Viral is a little bit different because it's a different couple, and then First Comes Like, is a little bit on the sweeter side, and I've seen it being recommended now for older teens as well. So I think for me, it just really, there was no rhyme or reason for that. It was just the characters. I was like, well, this heroine wouldn't say this, or this hero wouldn't really do this. So, and I think that's kind of the fun of sex scenes, is that it's another way to create your characters and put another layer on them. Otherwise, they would all sound the same, like all the characters.
Right. You could just plug in whatever.
Insert, change the name and put somebody else in. So that's what I do. I use the characters as my guide.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think for me, it's really about if I cut this scene, would it change the book at all? and so, and while we were dating, my sixth book that comes out this summer is my book that has the most sex in it. And that's because of the two characters. Like, I couldn't have cut any of the scenes. It would have totally, like, all of those scenes were necessary for them and their relationship. But there are other books that probably have half the amount of sex in them that I've written because of, like, that's how it worked for those books and those characters. So it really is dependent on the book itself and what I'm writing, and the characters and like how they relate to one another and how their relationship is.
Right. We have a great question from Madison on, where's Madison? Facebook, I believe. One of the things I love about romance novels is the diversity, both in authors and characters. Why do you think this is so pervasive in the genre? And how do you see this changing and growing in the future? Any thoughts? I'll peg you.
I honestly think that romance authors are close to the readership, and our readership has been demanding diverse authors for quite a while. It took maybe a while for the publishers to catch up, but you know, again, it's paying with your pocketbook, right? Our readers are diverse and they want to read all kinds of characters. And I think publishers are responding to that, finally.
Yeah.
Maybe not as fast as they should, to be honest, but they're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in this industry. I mean, I've been writing for about 12 years now. So I've seen it, you know, change and grow in front of my eyes. And, you know, one of the great things and what I've always tried to do is, you know, even in contemporary romance, we have a certain degree of world building we have to adhere to. And so, you know, I just try to write the world as I see it. And I think, you know, readers do respond to that because it's one more thing that sort of doesn't break the world when they read the book. And so I hope it continues to grow as it is and we get more voices into the table, because more voices is, you know, it's never a bad thing.
And I think, you know, we were talking about Hollywood and how the people in charge are mostly men. Well, publishing is the same. The people in charge are mostly white men who think of the books that are successful as a certain kind of book. And now they're changing their mind on that because they've had to, because they've seen that books have been successful that are very different kinds of books. And so, so I think publishing is changing for those reasons, that they have like seen the evidence. I hope that they continue to change and bring in more and more voices.
I just want to add that in historical, we also have diverse voices. I just reading this one, which by the way has Julia Quinn on the front saying smart and witty, the perfect historical read. Yay. And I'm really loving it. It's totally fun. And I think Vanessa, you know, Vanessa Riley has been around for a while too, but a little while. But someone like Bev Jenkins has been around a long time. So we do, it's not even by, you know, bounded by period in romance. People have made changes everywhere.
So I obviously get asked about this a lot now with the color conscious casting in Bridgerton. And while I can't claim any credit for that because I was not involved in the casting, it's something that I am overjoyed by and something that I'm incredibly grateful for. And what is really interesting to me and what I think a lot of people don't realize is that you need to take actually a step back from the cast and go into the writer's room. And the Bridgerton writer's room was incredibly diverse, both in terms of gender and sexual orientation and race. And you had this incredible group of writers and they were able to bring their imaginations and their lived experiences. And I'm one person. I can only be as diverse as myself in terms of what I can imagine and my lived experiences and what I can write without potentially doing harm to somebody, because I think, you know, if I'm going to try to write in a culture other than my own, I want to make sure I do it well and without being hurtful in some way. And so by bringing in all these people and making it this collective thing, they were able to take a story that started out just with me and expand it in this way that is just absolutely beautiful and glorious. And it helps that it's a visual medium. Because, you know, if you're writing a novel and I've got my characters walking down the street, I'm not going to describe everybody they're passing. I'm just not going to do that. But in Bridgerton, you've got, you know, they're walking down the street and you see all the people that they're passing. And it just sort of puts it out there as saying like, this is the world and this is what it looks like. And it's great. And I really love that. I'm just very grateful for all the help from all these incredibly diverse writers to have made this happen. And the other thing is like, sometimes I get dinged by, the historical accuracy police. And they're like, well, there wouldn't have been a Duke that looked like that. I'm like, yeah, well, there probably also wouldn't have been a Duke with teeth that white or abs that ripped. And chances are he also would have had syphilis. So we're okay. And I've done a lot of thinking about this over the past couple of years about, what does a romance novel mean? What are we trying to achieve? And I really think that the purpose of romance novels and the reason we read them is for that feeling that I mentioned early on. We read it for this happy feeling, for this happy ending that we're getting. And if you're going to create a show like Bridgerton, you could, on one hand, adhere to very, very strict historical accuracy, try to make it a history lesson. Or you could say, you know what, we're doing this thing that's supposed to give people this feeling of a happy ending. And if you're going to go that way, then I think I want as many people as possible to have a part of that feeling, to be able to see themselves in that happy ending. And so I think it's fantastic. I'm so grateful to everybody for making it that way.
Thank you. Here we go. I agree. I'm really excited about what the landscape of the romance genre is right now. I'm really excited and very proud to be a part of it. As far as forecasting, I don't know. I mean, I think people are coming new to the genre, and like was mentioned earlier, they're not going to leave once you're in there. We're hooked. I mean, that's how. I mean, I picked up my first romance novel at 13, and I've never looked back. We have a specific question for Jasmine from Margaret, who looks like she's an alum. So she said hello. So Jasmine says, I love how deeply your books involve your characters' professional careers. How much research do you do on that, on what each profession involves?
It depends on the book and the profession. Some I already know more, like if I have a friend who's worked there or who worked in that profession, I can just sort of talk to them. But there's like, for instance, my last book, Party of Two, was about a lawyer who I am a lawyer, but she starts her own law firm. I didn't do that. Like I don't know anything about how it is to run a law firm. So I interviewed a whole bunch of women who started their own law firms to see like, what was that like? What were the challenges? What were the good things? Why did you decide to do it? And one of the wonderful things there is like, it was so, I was so nervous to do it. I mean, partly it's just because I have a much shorter career than everybody else in this panel. I've only been doing this for like 5 years. And so I was like nervous to reach out to people, and people were so excited to talk to me. They were so helpful. And so that was really wonderful in like getting help from so many people about like how to do this character right. And it was also helpful because there were so many things that like I had envisioned as part of her character that they were like, oh, well, she would be anxious about this. And I was like, okay, yes, she would be the type of person to be like that. So that, things like that were great. But then there are other things that I just like, sometimes I have conversations with people, sometimes I read a bunch on the internet, but it just sort of really depends on who the characters are and how much I already know or don't know about their backgrounds.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting in contemporary. You're held to this is our world, right. Readers know if you know your stuff or not, we live in it. We had another question. Let me get to that, sorry. Really, it's just sliding into the recommendation. What you're reading now that you really love and that you think everybody should definitely be reading this book right now. It's either already out or maybe about to come out, something that's fairly recent.
I have one that's about to come out. It comes out in 2 weeks, I think. It's called Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. It is just a charming contemporary romance. It's about it starts with a woman getting drunkenly married in Vegas, but it is not at all the book that you anticipate it being from that. She marries another woman. She does not remember what her new wife looks like at all. And then they have this like cross-country romance and then end up meeting up. And it's just very delightful and coming of age romance. I loved it. It comes out on the 20th.
It's called, what's the title again? Honey. Okay.
By Morgan Rogers.
That sounds great. Alicia, do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, I do. So it just came out last week, but it's Big Bad Wolf by Seleka Snyder. And it is excellent if you like urban fantasy or paranormal romance. It's just sort of like an alternate universe where, you know, werewolves are real, kind of shifters are real. And it's just a little bit gritty, but like very much sort of a, you know, I heard her describe it as like, you know, the world might be terrible, but there's still hope. And that's the feeling that you get when you read the book. And another one that's coming out, I think next month is, and I'm in the middle of reading it right now, but it's Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. And it is excellent. Of course, Sally's always sort of a tried and true, but yeah, but Seleka's debut is out now and definitely go pick that up. I could not put it down. I was up all night.
I miss paranormal. I feel like there's still not enough, you know? I'm happy to see.
Yeah, I think it's resurging now, which I'm really excited. Like I feel like genre goes through kind of cycles where, you know, there's a huge rush of them and then there's none for a while. And I hope that this sort of like Nalini Singh style, Lona Andrews style, you know, fantasies get a little push now. But if you like those authors, you'll definitely love this one.
Great.
I have to say on that front, Alona's book, self-published book, just hit number 5 in the New York Times, and I'm reading that and really enjoying it.
What's the title?
Well, I'm no good on titles. Hold on a second. It's got a sec. I'm pulling up my note, but I'll just oh, come on. Oh, I can't find it, but I'll just give this book another plug in case you didn't see it, because I really am loving it. The Alona Andrews is called Blood Heir, and this one is called The Duke, the Lady, and a Baby. And
it's A Duke, the Lady.
A Duke, the Lady, and a baby.
I only correct you because like I wrote about that book for not BuzzFeed, for BookBub a while back. And I remember being like, looking it up like 6 times, being like, wait, is it A Duke or the Duke? So I have a couple. I've actually been catching up on my Tessa Dare reading. I realized I sort of missed quite a few. And all of a sudden I was like, I started reading some that I hadn't read before, and I was like, oh my gosh, how did I get behind on this? And so Tessa, I think, is a really good read-alike for like me or Eloisa or Sarah McLean, people like that. But one book that I read that's coming out at the end of this month, no, the end of next month, sorry, is Wild Women in the Blues.
I also have that one. I have it. I haven't started it yet. I'm so excited to read it.
I'm excited to read that one too.
Yeah.
It's really good. Well, you know, I ended up with 3 copies, so I can probably send it to one of you. Yes. This one I think is actually a finished copy I got. Like it's not even the ARC.
And it's a different era, right? Like what's the time era on that?
So well, I have to back up for a minute because I have like a history with this book. So it's extra special to me. Years ago, I was judging a contest, and I don't really do that anymore, but I was judging this contest and I read, you know, you would read the first chapter, and I always, when I judge contest, I would always try to do a lot of notes because I felt like if you were going to pay to enter a contest, you should get more than just some kind of like score at the end that is impossible to interpret. And I went through this whole thing and I got to the end and I'm like, I couldn't even find like a comma out of place. I mean, and I look for anything. I'm like, what? I can't. And finally just wrote, this book is ready to be published and I am excited to read it. I don't know. And it turned into this. Much later, this is the one that it turned into. And I think she made a lot of changes. I think it was originally going to be truly a historical romance set in Jazz Age Chicago, and this is really more historical fiction, and it's got 2 parallel stories going on. There's the story of what's happening in 1925 Chicago, and then something that's happening in 2015. So we'll just call that contemporary. And they are connected. You realize they're connected as you go along, and it's really marvelous. I mean, again, like personally special for me because like now, you know, since then I've become good friends with Denny, but also, boy, does she create the scene so well. I mean, I don't know much about Jazz Age Chicago. I don't know much about this culture of the Great Migration, which a lot of these people have been a part of just coming up from the South and moving to the North. And I just felt like I was plunked right in there. Just the speech that people use, the vernacular, the foods that they're eating, the way they interact and talk to each other. I really felt like I was in a different world, one that I didn't know anything about. And so I love that, you get this great story, but at the same time, you feel like you're really kind of opening your mind a little bit more to just an experience that is completely new to you. And so I have been touting this book everywhere. Hint, I might be mentioning it tomorrow on the Today Show. It's a really, really great book.
Well, those are some great recommendations. I'm a fan of Lisa Byrne, who writes historical romances for Avon. And I think I think maybe book 5 of hers just came out. It's just, I don't see a lot of people talking about her books, and they are, to me, so good. Her first book, to me, it was sort of like old school meets new, like, familiar with the genre, what a historical romance is, yet there was something so different and unique about it. So I'm a big fan. If you are a fan of historical romance and have not read Lisa Byrne, I strongly recommend her. Start anywhere.
I'm just going to chime in. If you've never met her, she's absolutely lovely.
One time I think she came to a conference back when, we were going to conferences and doing things. And
She lives in Washington State, so I got a chance to meet her here.
I really enjoy her books. And I know I'm getting the signal that it's close to wrap up time, but I want to wrap up with one final question to everyone. Sorry, my dog. And it's really, what's next? A lot of people, our viewers are huge fans out of everyone here. Some of you have a release coming in the next month or two, but what is next? What are you working on that you may want to talk about, or what might be coming out that you want to talk about before we, wave goodbye to everyone tonight? Jasmine?
I mean, I'm currently working on something, but I'm always way too superstitious to talk about anything that I'm working on.
Now I'm more intrigued.
Because especially when I'm in the midst of a first draft, I don't know what I'm doing. I, unlike Julia, do write a very terrible first draft, so I'm in the terrible part of it. So we'll see how that goes. But I am very excited about While We Were Dating, which comes out in July. I wrote it, during the pandemic. So it is particularly special to me. So I hope everyone loves it.
Alicia?
Yeah, so of course, First Comes Light comes out next week, and I am kind of in Jasmine's boat in that I am also very superstitious, but I did just sign 2 contracts this past week. Somehow they both came at the same time. So I can, if you stay tuned, I'll be announcing that stuff.
Congratulations. That's exciting. I'm excited to hear everyone. Some of the questions we were pelted that I didn't get to talk about were, how are we writing? How's it going during the pandemic? And has that affected us? Well, I'm sure it's affected all of us differently, but yes, we're working. Eloisa?
I have Wild Child coming out in the spring, and then I'm excited because I have my first novel coming out as myself. It's Mary Bly and my real professor name. Lizzie and Dante coming out this summer, which is a story about a Shakespeare professor who falls in love on an Italian island, and to a chef. My husband's no chef, but I did fall in love with an Italian. So it's fun. It's travel. It's, tourism. It's all the things that we can't do right now.
Yeah, that sounds great. I was about to say that sounds like something people definitely would want to dive into right now.
I think it'll be fun. And then I have really exciting, I'm part of an anthology that'll come out in the fall with Christy Caldwell and Erica Ridley and Jana McGregor. It's called Mistletoe Christmas. And we just had a really fun time planning a crazy party in Regency, England. That's a country house party that causes a lot of scandals, where the host basically passes out marriage licenses like confetti, trying to deal with all the scandals. So our heroines, none of them expect to get married, except one of them is already married, and she has to go there and pretend that she is that she's still married in essence, although they're living apart. So it's kind of like a forced marriage. It's really fun, and that's called Mistletoe Christmas. So.
Well, we're always looking for Christmas anthologies. I know I am. Once it hits mid-October, I'm like, where are the Christmas anthologies at? Julia, what's next for you?
Well, so I actually have not done a whole lot of writing during the pandemic for two reasons. One, I've been really kind of focusing on the show, but also my husband is an infectious disease specialist. And so our home has been, I think, impacted in different ways. And so I've really been focusing on my family a lot. But I do have something really cool coming out this year that I'm incredibly excited about. And that is my first graphic novel. It's called Miss Butterworth and the Mad Baron, which is this book within a book that's been a joke in my books. I think actually wasn't somebody reading it in one of your books once? Eloisa, yeah. So it actually started out in It's in His Kiss, which is one of the Bridgerton books, where Hyacinth she goes and visits Lady Danbury, this older woman, once a week and reads to her from this book. And it's just this over the top Gothic novel, which is just, every chapter ends with her hanging off a cliff or like getting run over by a cart or nearly getting, sold into slavery. Just one of those things. It's total Perils of Pauline. And I had so much fun with it that I started putting it in other books. And so it's probably been in 5 or 6 of my books. And eventually readers started asking me to write it. And I said, I can't do that because it's really fun to do like a paragraph or two, but a whole novel would just not be great. But then at some point I realized it actually would make a really fun graphic novel. And my youngest sister is a cartoonist. So we co-wrote it and she illustrated it, and it is coming out in August, and it is just incredibly fun. It was a bit of a challenge because in the canon, that the heroine's mother was pecked to death by pigeons. Mm-hmm. And so I had to figure out like, how do we do this? And how do you make the pigeons sympathetic after they do that? Because, we want everybody to like the pigeons. So that's coming out in August, and I'm really, really excited about that.
That sounds adorable.
Yeah, and that one actually would be appropriate for some younger readers as well. I think if people are interested in a romantic graphic novel with talking pigeons.
Well, thank you for all of our authors joining us tonight. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to Barnes & Nobles for hosting this virtual event in the month of love. And we hope that you will buy all our titles, pre-order or available now through Barnes & Nobles. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks.